using assertions. Yep. So yes, like I said, PyTest is a very great tool. I think everyone should learn how to use it if you're using Python. It's very simple to use. Yeah. Yep. So this is very, very interesting one because a lot of people actually don't explore the data. You know, I guess it's the excitement of, you know, oh, I've gotten the data. Let me just start. You know, import scikit-learn, import TensorFlow as TF. You know, you want to start getting down with your modeling. But actually, what you should actually do is, it's important as a data scientist to, number one, you obviously want to clean the data set. You want to see if it's right, and you want to explore that data set. Yeah, a few questions to ask is this data relevant, right? Do the data I have, is it going to be useful in any way for my analysis, right? That's important, right? Because not all data sets you receive are going to be useful for you. So you need to query it and be like, can I use this? Is the data set a good representative of reality, right? So if you're trying to model the process, you need data that is representative of what you're trying to do, right? I'll give you an example. If you're trying to, say, predict sales for a company, right? They have stores everywhere. Let's say they have 5 stores around Lagos, right? So they have, let's say 2 stores, right? They have a store on the mainland and a store on the island, right? And you're trying to, you've gotten all the data for them. And the only data you have is data from the mainland, right? You don't have data from the island and you're trying to use that. That's not actually representative of reality. It's not a good representative of reality because you're not going to get, you know, anything about the behavior of people on the island, right? So it's important to also query your data and be like, is it representative of reality? And how do you do that? Is by speaking to people that know the data, right? And actually going through it with them. Is it complete? How do you test if it's complete? You could use, like I said, you could use assertions, unit tests to actually test that, you know. Is it diverse? Diversity of data is extremely important. And I added this particularly because you've seen computer vision systems built with, you know, deep learning tools that actually do a very bad job of identifying, say, Black people. You know, they can't recognize Black faces, and all those things. It's extremely, extremely important. I think one of the things that need to be spoken about more is the ethical responsibilities of data scientists, right? You need to make sure the systems you're building are, you know, are diverse, have diverse data sets, you know, it's representative of reality. So it's important to keep that in mind. Cool. So yeah, I mean, I think Femi told me that you use, you know, Kubeflow. So that's really good. You know, it's extremely important to use lifecycle management tools. You know, so MLflow is, I really love to use it. I mean, it's just really nice because it's easy to use. It has a very nice interface. There's Kedro, which is a tool. It's a data and data pipeline and machine learning. What's it called? A lifecycle management tool that was written by. I think it was released by McKinsey, and it's really good. Surprisingly, given that it came from a company like McKinsey. And you have, so MLflow is the one I use. It has 4 components, you know, helps you to track your experiments, you know, and by experiments, which helps you to keep track of, for example, if you're trying to do, say, gradient descents or whichever optimization algorithm you're using, helps you to keep track of those parameters you're using. You could use that to save it. And then you can come back and query that, oh, like this parameter gave me this results, you know, you could do all that. You have ML project that helps you structure, that gives you like a project structure of how to write your data science code. There's a project called Cookie Cutter Data Science, which is part of Kedro actually. So it gives you, so when you're trying to start a new data science project, it creates like a folder structure, a project folder structure of what to follow and what the folder should look like. Model deployments, you know, it helps you deploy your models, which is, I mean, something, you know, that a lot of people don't talk about. Deployment isn't, it's quite difficult. It's one of those more difficult aspects of machine learning at the moment, you know, deploying models and deploying them properly. So MLflow helps you do a decent job of it, you know, and also helps you manage your different models in a central repo. So tools like this are extremely important. It's always very good to learn how to use them, and to do that. Cool. Right. So this is the only way, in my opinion, one of the ways to actually get really good at data science is reading popular open source code. Scikit-learn is a brilliant one to start with. Because the good thing about Scikit-learn is you can actually see how to structure a data science project or a data science tool. And you see people discussing solutions, discussing implementations. It's a very good thing. So what I do sometimes is I spend some of my weekends, especially when it's dark and rainy like this, going through the scikit-learn repo, right? Going through the issues to see if I can actually find certain issues I can pick up. So because I know it can be quite, especially for beginners and maybe even intermediate people, to be like, can I contribute to open source? Because it feels overwhelming. But the good thing about scikit-learn is it has a lot of very beginner-friendly issues you could pick up and contribute, right? And then that helps you build your confidence, that plugs you into the community and all that. So the screenshot here is actually like from the scikit-learn's page, and essentially it's just each of those folders, each of the folder here covers it. It contains the code for that module of scikit-learn. So for example, if you want to see how they implemented the say ridge regression, right, you just need to go to the scikit-learn, the linear folder here, linear model folder, look for ridge regression and read through it. It's one of the best things you could do, right? And I absolutely recommend it. So cool. We're getting to the end of this. I don't want to bore you people. I want to also keep the floor open for questions. So yeah, and this is not a technical best practice or something, but it's important because one of the things I always tell people is, if you're trying to, in my experience, right, you will find, so data science has a lot of hype going around. Like, people are like, oh yeah, data science could solve your problem. It's a silver bullet for all your problems. But in a lot of cases, it's actually not, And even in a lot of cases, you have a lot of resistance in the organization you are trying to implement data science in. Right? It's not like Cargo where you have a data set somewhere, you build everything, you build your confusion matrix and you're happy, right? This, in real life, you have to actually convince certain people to be like, oh, this is good. We need to pay for it. We need you to back us. We need you to put money behind this. So always start with a low-hanging fruit use case to gain buy-in. And by that I mean, sit within an organization. Think of, what do you think? How can I convince people to actually see the benefits of actually using data science? If you work in an organization where there's some resistance or some inertia towards investing in this. And to do that, you need to define clear KPIs to measure the impact of the result. So you do that quick analysis. You're like, oh, you're happy with it. Okay, let me give you an example. Say, a good example is, say you work in an organization where they have a marketing team, right? And that marketing team have, they send random emails to people. They don't actually send targeted emails to say, oh, target their customers, right? So it's almost Christmas now. They just send out random emails to people, the same emails without actually tweaking the messages, tweaking all that. And you've been thinking, you're like, you know what? And then the open rate for those emails, let's say, for example, is 30%, right? So you're like, okay, if the current method you're using, which is just random targeting customers, the open rate for those emails is 30%, and you have an idea as a data scientist, right? And you're like, you know what, I can actually improve, you feel like you can use machine learning targeted, to actually predict, what type of the propensity of certain people to open certain emails, right? But then to do that, because people are stuck in their ways, they're happy with their random email sending, right? You need to find a way to convince them, to show them that, listen, this is good, right? So one of the KPIs you could actually use to actually measure the impact of the results, in this case, could be how much, what is the open rate of the emails, So that means you have a clear metric you can use to measure. Yeah. And one of the things I do in that case is, or you could do, is to build a dashboard for the business stakeholders, including some before and after scenario analysis. And before and after scenario analysis is, this is how you've been doing it before, right? In your random way, we've been getting, say, 30% open rate, right? If we use this more intelligent method, we could get open rate of, say, 20%, right? And how much, now, it's important to actually speak the language of the people you're speaking with. How much is the difference in those, from 30% to 50%? Is it worth the investment in costs, right? Is it worth the investment in this solution, right? How much is it going to be? So it's extremely important to use dashboards to explain to people, because I also felt when I started out in this field, I was quite naive, because I was quite excited about my skills. I could import scikit-learn, I could import TensorFlow, and do all these things. But in real, people don't actually care about that. Well, your fellow nerds, if I could call them that, care about that, right? But people that you're selling this to don't care about your fancy algorithm, right? They just want to know, how does this impact what I am doing, right? How does this work for me? What is the impact? What's the gain? So there are many ways to do it. There's something called the uplift curve, right? And the uplift curve is basically just says, oh, this is the baseline, this is the new method, this is how much we get. Yeah, it's extremely useful if you want to learn how to do that. So learning how to build quick dashboards to show to your audience is really important. So yes, so this is the last slide. We went through this quickly. So the last slide is communicate with business stakeholders frequently, right? And this is also a very important advice, because if you get, let's say you get buy-in, right, and after demonstrating your advertising, your targeted advertising model, and it's working very well, they're happy, right? You're like, oh yes, we'll give you, £2,000 or whatever, 500,000 naira to build this, support here, right? It's also very important to hold regular meetings with business stakeholders to have their continued buy-in. You don't want to alienate them, because I have learned that in my experience, and I speak a lot from my experience, by the way, because this is, a lot of these things are, you have to actually be in the field to actually experience them, is that a lot of data scientists are quite guilty of just, oh, I don't want to speak to these annoying business people, I just want to do my work, right? It's not going to work like that, because ultimately, you are not going to be the one to use whatever you're building. So it's important to actually keep the people, business stakeholders along, in the whole process, and tell them what's going on. Again, it's important to communicate, know who your audience is, and do not communicate with technical jargon, right? It's very tempting, I must say, to be like, oh, I've been building this model for 2 months. Oh my God, I built a very nice CNN network that could actually do image classification, right? We're going to conquer the world. And then try to bore your audience with all that. And they don't actually care. They just want to see something nice, right? So it's important to keep that in mind and make sure you use the appropriate audience and appropriate tools to actually communicate the, what you're trying to do. So I'll give you an example of why effective and regular communication is important. I was working on a project, right? And it was with 2 people. It was an external project, so we had to be in the, which is how a lot of data science teams are managed, by the way. So there are certain, so there are 2, I'll say there are 2 models, like loosely, I'm going to say this, I'm not really sure, is you either work within an organization where you use machine learning to improve some of their processes, right? Or data science to improve some of their processes, or you are a consultant, you go out there, you sell your time and you help companies solve their different problems, right? So it means you could go around different companies too. And that's really fascinating. It's really interesting. But then the problem with that, no problem. The challenge with that is you have to learn, who the people to speak to are, how to get the data, you also have to manage very complex human relationships. So we were on this project, we were brought in. Now keep in mind, the company also, at that point, had their own in-house data scientists. So imagine how that kind of, they brought some new people to take over the project they were working. So we had a lot of friction around them. So it was very important to get their buy-in, to tell them, listen, we're not here to take your jobs, you're just here to help. So communication, trying to know who your audience is, what to tell them is extremely important. It's extremely important to work on those things. I know a lot of, some of you are probably think that, why are you telling us this? It's extremely important because I've seen this in the 4 years I've been working, how, underrated and how people don't focus on their communication skills, as a data scientist or as data scientist. Last unsolicited advice, start a blog, write, you'll be surprised who is going to read it, just write. And yeah, I guess that's, all I have to say about, a bunch of best practices that I thought of I could share with, people from my experience, from what I've seen. I'll share this deck with you. I think I've sent it to Femi. So Femi, there's an update to this, Femi. So I'll just send you the updated one, and then please share it with people. But yeah, that's me. If you have any questions, I am more than happy to take them now.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. I personally learned a lot. I think everything that you said there has bordered around communication with fellow data scientists, and that has to it in writing your codes and how you, when you're writing, trying to you set parameters and just put them into your codes, because that way, I think it's even easier for you to test for different parameters instead of just writing the same code over and over again. So I've learned a whole lot to communicating with stakeholders and trying to make sure that you are speaking the same language. Because of course, the businessman doesn't want to, he's probably not interested in how a CNN works or something. He just wants to see what the values, what profit is going to make if he pays this particular amount for the product. So I've learned a whole lot. And I'm sure the interns have also, and they have a couple of questions that they would like to ask. So first off on my list is from Big, right here on Zoom. He says, what does it take to be a data engineer with EY? And at 42, can I still make it?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll answer the second question. I think, definitely can still make it. I'm way younger than you, but I mean, I've seen 50-year-old people changing careers and doing something else, right? So absolutely. Yeah, you can decide to become a data scientist tomorrow, as long as you have the passion to do it. You want to learn, and I guess also a realization that I feel strange. This feels strange. I'm telling a first-year-old what to do, but I guess we all have different things we learn. It's absolutely you can still make it. Just keep trying to learn. There are resources out there. There are people you could always reach out to, and you can do it. What does it take to be a data engineer with EY? So I work as a machine learning engineer or data scientist, depending on which team you are. I don't actually know because I don't work directly with data engineers. But I imagine that you need to know, if I was going to ask, I mean, a data engineer is, I guess, someone who needs to know how to use database systems, who needs to know how to build data pipelines, right? By data pipelines, I mean, your data sets are going to be in different places. It's going to be in ERP systems. It's going to be some CSV, some Excel sheets, right? In some old database. Even Microsoft Access. I have seen clients have given me data in Microsoft Access before. So I guess it's an important skill for data engineers is learn how to manage all that and bring them together, how to create a very nice pipeline. I actually don't think EY, well, EY is a very big organization, right? So I wouldn't know. But my own branch of the business, I don't think we hire data engineers. So I'll look for less, I'll look for more tech, like core tech companies you could apply to. But I'm more than happy to maybe send some resources to Femi and he could share it with you. But yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. So another question here that we have is from Miracle right here on Zoom. And then he's asking, he says, what tool do you use in building your dashboards to communicate your business solutions to stakeholders?
Yeah, so it depends, right? So I would say there are 3 levels, right? So there are some companies, there are some clients you work with that have money, right? They do have money, right? So they have their own dashboarding tool. So for example, I've been in testing clients, we have Tableau, right? Tableau is one of the tools, or they have Power BI, and they have licenses for it. And I say they have money because those tools are actually expensive, really expensive to use. So Tableau, Power BI. If you're looking for open source alternatives, I always there is this. Let me quickly get the name. There's this Apache tool that is extremely great. It's called Apache Superset. I will put in the link in the. So it's open source because obviously Apache. It's if you want to build, dashboards without actually paying ridiculous prices for licenses, you could use that. So it's basically, you just need to show maybe a trend or whatever you think is important to communicate to your client in that moment. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, a lot of different tools you can use. Power BI, Tableau, this one, Apache Superset. I favor open source tools. So I always try to keep open source tools.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. So another question here is from Jolomi, right here on Zoom. So Jolomi says, as a data scientist, what is your take on Python versus R?
I don't have so disappointed to hear that I'm not going to. I don't pick sides. I mean, I use Python extensively, like it's my primary language. But I'm more than happy to use R. I've used R on another project, right? My take is that learn both if you can. If you cannot learn both, pick one and stick to it. It's ultimately, it's what you're comfortable with. I see programming languages. I find arguments about programming languages. I find them unproductive, because it's a tool at the end of the day. Just use it, man. As long as your client's happy, they don't really care. I mean, some clients, some of the people you work with would be like, "Oh, prefer to use Python or R." But if I have to give if I had a gun to my head and someone was like, "Pick one," yeah, I'll definitely pick Python. And the reason is, Python is more general purpose, right? You could do a lot of things with it. You could write a very nice scalable server. It's robust, right? R is getting there, R is getting there. They have certain things they excel at. R is extremely good for statistical modeling. If you're trying to do, for example, we're building a forecasting project, and R was the tool we had to use because there were way superior tools in R. We didn't find that in Python, right? I mean, and there are people that have built interfaces between R and Python, right? There's RPy2, for example, that allows you to call R scripts or R code from Python and vice versa. So it doesn't matter. Just learn both if you can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alan. Okay, so another question here from one of our interns says, during your presentation, you mentioned working with ML flow, which seems a bit like data engineering.
Yeah.
So the question is, are data scientists required to know how to build pipelines, or is it company specific?
Yeah, it's company specific, right? But it doesn't hurt to know how to. So there are certain teams where you, as a data scientist, you will not touch anything pipeline. Your data will be ready for you. It's like heaven, right? But not many people have that. It's a luxury. So it doesn't hurt to know how to, obviously, learn how to query from database, learn how to join your data sets together, learn how to do that. Learn how to write production ready code. There are even certain teams where where machine learning engineers don't do any production stuff. They hand it over to another team, right? Right? But it doesn't hurt to learn, at least to be comfortable with, have a core skill set, obviously. But it doesn't hurt to have, different, the other skills you need. So ML flow, I don't consider it as data engineering because it's not. Maybe Kedro, the other one is more data engineering because now you use it to manage your data. If you're changing your data formats, you can use that to manage it. ML flow is just for managing your modeling process, right? If you're calling scikit-learn, you're trying different hyperparameters, you want to save all that kind of stuff, and you want to link it to what result did I get. So yeah, it doesn't hurt to know. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to know data engineering skills. I mean, I have that. I know how to build all these things, but I rarely do that in my job because I have people that do that for me. But I'm not going to be surprised if I go into another team and I don't have that and I have to do it myself.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much. So another question here is, which is similar to the first, but it says in terms of best practices, what are the most appropriate programming languages for projects? And I think you already addressed it, but then he has languages like JavaScript, HTML, R, Python, etc. So
Yeah.
is it that, well, from what you said, is it that the program or the project determines, or companies have like their own preferences?
It depends. Some certain clients will have their own preferences. Again, I always say, except you are a one-man army, which in many cases you won't be, right? You just speak the two common languages for doing data science or machine learning, like, is Python or R, right?
Yes.
So be comfortable. What I always tell people is be comfortable with one language, right? Be comfortable with one language. Try to use that as your tool. Don't get distracted by the noise because there are a lot of things, right? When I think 3-4 years ago, I wanted to learn Julia so badly. I was like, oh my God, this Julia thing must be really hard. So I haven't learned it because I don't actually need to use it. So it's important to learn how to shut out all that noise because a lot of things can. If you want to learn JavaScript is a very, very interesting language. I was a software developer before I became a data scientist, so I know how to write JavaScript, and it's extremely, extremely nice. I mean, you could do a lot of very interesting things on the web, right? So if I have to say, I'll be like, yeah, learn some JavaScript. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to do some JavaScript. I mean, TensorFlow has a JavaScript binding, by the way, TensorFlow.js, where you could train your model, you could deploy them within the browser, right? And then it means you could open a whole world of possibilities for yourself. So it doesn't hurt to learn some of these things. But again, you are constrained by time, right? So good luck.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. So this is from Adiola Akonde on YouTube. He says, when it comes to communicating with C-level executives, what are the things to avoid in presentation?
What are the things? Number one, they don't care about, don't tell them about CNN or RNN or all those things. They are going to kick you out of the room. You're going to lose them. You don't want to lose them. Like, forget your technical jargon. Like, first thing. What you should also avoid is, interesting thing I've learned in my role is that you need to know because C-level guys are extremely, extremely busy and they are ruthless, right? I'll tell you, my very first presentation in my role, they canceled it. They canceled it like 30 minutes into they were like, rubbish. Now imagine how that is. And now because it wasn't what we were saying, it was because what we were presenting wasn't right. Like, apparently data was bad, we didn't really check it, right? So that was like baptism of fire. So what you want to do is cut the technical jargon, they don't care. Learn what they want to hear. So it's good to know who the guys you're speaking, what they want to hear. So if you're speaking to the CFO, for example, Chief Financial Officer, he needs to know the numbers. If you're speaking to the CEO, he wants to know the numbers and also how does he improve operation and all this kind of stuff. So those are the kind of things to keep in mind.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Alan. So I have another question here. This is asking about communication between data scientists and team members working on a project. So it says, are the best practices that you've mentioned in terms of coding, do they apply across the industry, or do companies have their own specific best practices or guidelines to follow when working on projects and coding?
I mean, so you have some industry-wide, we've all agreed on certain best practices, like use version control, write your doc script and all that. So all those ones are almost industry-wide. It's what people have, in the field of software development, we've applied it to how to manage our data science projects. So those are almost, standard practices, right? Standard best practices. Definitely, certain teams will have certain, there will be something that will be like, oh, your indentation should be four spaces or four, all those things. It depends. So every team will have their own, but I don't expect it to widely differ from what I already put here or some of the ones I didn't even cover. that are out there. So yes, it's a mix of both, really.
Okay, thank you. So another question from Emmanuel Ogunwedi, right here on Zoom. And then, so he's saying, what's a typical day like for you at work? How much time is paid to building in-house tools?
Yep. That's a very good question. I like it actually. So what's a typical day like for you? So I've moved teams. So I'm going to talk about my two roles I've held in this organization, right? So my first role, I was a client-facing data scientist, right? And my client-facing data scientist, it meant that every 6, 8, 7, 8 months, I was on a different client. It was extremely exciting, right? Because I did projects in healthcare, I did projects in construction, I did with real estate. So you'll be exposed to different industries, right? So my typical day, I couldn't predict it. It was, there were certain days when I had to fight certain stakeholders to be like, guy, you need to give me data. Like, how am I going to get data sets? Or you're trying to speak to someone, or you're trying to hold like a little conference for people to understand what the problem they're trying to solve is. So, or answering emails, or you'll be surprised that sometimes I was telling Femi before this call started that there was a project I worked on it lasted for like maybe 18 months. It was quite big, right? It's quite a big project. We spent 6 months trying to get data, trying to clean it. 6 whole months, So it depends on the project. And that was my client-facing role. So I'm now in a research role, right? In a research and development role where all I do is read research papers, try to implement it. Read research papers, try to implement it for our own use case, or try to do our own research and see if we can write something out of it. So a lot of that, my typical day, because I do a lot of NLP now, typically day is sometimes reading papers or trying to build models or trying to improve the quality of data we have. Because the data we have, we've learned that we need way more. So the thing about deep learning is you need tons and tons of data sets, right? So trying to improve that data sets, trying to think of how to do all that. So we do a lot of meetings, a lot of tech, a lot of code writing, a lot of experimentation. And that's why tools like MLflow is important, right? Because it could get quickly unwieldy if you don't learn how to manage that process, right? Because you want to be like, you have one very interesting idea, you're like, oh my God, let me try this. You try it, and then you're like, oh, this works, right? But you don't actually manage properly, and then you come back the next day and you're like, wait, what did I do yesterday? Right? So it's important to do that. So it depends on the team. It depends on the role you hold, really. I've only been in this research role. Oh wow, it's going to be 1 year in next month. Oh, I didn't even realize that. Anyway, I was in the old client-facing role for 3 years. So that was amazing, really. I did some very interesting projects. How much attention is paid to building an in-house tool? In the old team, not very much, because we had maybe 1 or 2 that I was interested in building. I built them, but because it was client-facing, we basically kind of used the tools the clients were happy to use or were happy to pay for. So we didn't really build in-house tools. But in this current team, we're basically building in-house tools every day. It's because it's a product. So we do research, applied research, right? So we do some research, and then we use that to build products for ourselves, right? And then we sell that to clients. So it's an inverted model, right? In the old one, the clients will come to you and be like, we have this problem. In this one, we'll be like, oh, we spotted this problem. Let's sell this product to them. So I guess that then dictates what you spend your time doing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alan. So talking about NLPs, Took Joseph right here on Zoom is saying, could you please give us a description of your work on applying NLP to low-level resources?
Yep. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share I'm going to share this link. I belong to this NLP community for Africans by Africans, and it's essentially you want to use natural language processing techniques to help to improve low resource languages, right? And the reason is a lot of these NLP tools are built for English, the major languages of the world, and it's what's it called? You don't have that much resources being spent on languages like this. So the group you could join it. It's extremely important. We have a Slack group where people are trying to do, a lot of the work right now is on something called neural machine translation, NMT, where you take, say, translation from English to, say, Fulani, or English to Yoruba, English to Hausa, right? You find data set, obviously, starts with data, right? You find something called the parallel corpus, which is English to the target language translation, right? Source language, target language. And you're trying to train an NLP model. There are a lot of ways to do that. An NLP model that will then learn that association and be able to predict or able to translate automatically English text into Hausa text, for example. So that's a link. You should go there. Currently, I am currently working on that type of translation for Fulani, or Fula actually. And the reason I decided to do that is because Fula is spoken in about 12 countries in West Africa, even up to Sudan, right? And spoken by a lot of people, but we have very, very poor NLP tools for them. So that's something I've been working on for it's been quite a while now. So hopefully I'm hoping to get more progress in the next 2-3 months. But yeah, a lot of good work is happening on Masakane. You should absolutely join it if you're interested in NLP for low resource languages.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. So there you have it. Join Masakane Slack group and catch up on the latest going on with NLP in Africa. I definitely will be joining immediately after this call, and I'll be sending the link to Alan's blog, so you all can go there and see the amazing material he has. He has done a lot of work, especially demystifying all the complex equations you see in so many materials on different things like your lasso regression, different algorithms. So you can please subscribe to Alan's blog and catch up on everything. So we've come to the end of today's webinar. Alan, I'd like to say a very big thank you. And I'm sure our interns are better for it because, of course, they had to deal with a lot of technical stuff, but they probably would have just lost sight of communication. And of course, talking to a C-level executive and telling him CNN is, I'm sure you've helped them avoid maybe their first or what would have been a baptism of fire for them in their first role. So please, I would like to say a very big thank you, and you have our continued gratitude, and we'd love to have you with us once again. And at this point, I'd like to say thank you. So if you have any final words for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you want to reach out to me, because I think Otuk Joseph has a question. I mean, I could speak to you after, so you could either find me on Twitter. I put my Twitter link there. I'm quite active there, so you could send me a DM. I'm quite responsive, or you could go on my website, send me an email, and I'll be able to respond. So, but yeah, it's been really good speaking to everyone. Very good questions. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alan. So thank you everyone for joining today. And as Amanda rightly mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this stage ends on Tuesday, and please send all your deliverables and write, as Alan rightly said. Publish that article, spread that word, say something, just write. You never know who is reading and who is watching. So thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, Alan.
Mm-hmm.